My daughter said her dad's new wife was better than me, so I revealed the truth. They hid. She called me a failure and chose their perfect little fantasy until one secret exposed everything they'd been lying about for years and changed her life forever. My name is Rachel. I'm 42 years old and I've been working as an accountant for over 20 years. Until 3 days ago, I considered myself a failure. At least that's what my daughter Emma constantly repeated. Today, as I type this story, I'm sitting in my renovated apartment drinking wine that cost more than I used to spend on myself in an entire month. And I can say with certainty, I wasn't the failure in this story. It all started on a Tuesday in March at La Paloma Mexican restaurant in downtown. I had invited Emma for lunch in a desperate attempt to reconnect our relationship that seemed more distant with each phone call. She was in her second year at Northwestern University, a university that I religiously paid for, dispersing $28,000 per year from my hard-earned accountant's salary. Emma arrived 20 minutes late, as always, wearing a dress I didn't recognize. Probably a gift from Olivia, my ex-husband Matthew's new wife. She barely greeted me, already sitting down and fiddling with her phone as if I were an inconvenient interruption in her schedule. "Mom, I need to talk to you about the car," she said, without even raising her eyes from the screen. "That Toyota you gave me is embarrassing me on campus. Olivia said she can help me get something better." I felt my stomach twist. That 2019 Toyota Corolla wasn't new, but it was in perfect condition and had cost $15,000 from my savings. "Emma, that car is reliable and safe. You should be grateful for grateful." She finally raised her eyes, and the expression I saw there cut me like a knife. "Mom, you don't understand. Olivia drives a convertible Mercedes. She understands what it means to have style, unlike you." I tried to stay calm, ordering our drinks from the waitress who approached. But Emma wasn't finished. For the next 40 minutes as we ate, she made a point of comparing every aspect of my life with Olivia's. My modest 2-bedroom house versus the mansion that Matthew and Olivia had bought. My practical Target clothes versus the designer pieces Olivia wore. My useful gifts versus the expensive spa days that Olivia financed. "You know, Mom," she said, chewing her quesadilla, "sometimes I wonder how you and Dad ended up together. He clearly evolved, found someone who understands what success in life is. Olivia has class, has ambition. She's not a failure like..." She stopped, looked around, and realized other people were listening, but the damage was done. The word failure echoed across the table like a slap in the face. "Like me," I completed, my voice coming out lower than I intended. Emma shrugged as if she were just stating an obvious fact. "Don't take it personally, Mom. It's just that Olivia really has it all together. She's inspiring." I paid the bill in silence, ignoring the curious glances from other customers. I dropped Emma off at the dorm without saying a word and drove home with trembling hands on the wheel. That night, sitting alone in my kitchen, looking at the piles of bills I paid monthly, including my ungrateful daughter's university tuition, I finally understood something I had denied for 4 years. 4 years. That was how long it had been since Matthew left me for Olivia, his 28-year-old secretary. 4 years since my life had become a roller coaster of alimony payments, educational expenses, and the slow erosion of my self-esteem. 4 years watching Matthew rebuild his life with a woman who hadn't contributed a penny to raising our daughter, but who now reaped all the benefits of being the fun mom. I remember perfectly the day he left me. I was organizing Emma's 16th birthday party, worried about every detail, when he simply announced that he had found his true happiness. Olivia was pregnant, a pregnancy that I later discovered had begun months before he told me about the affair. The divorce process was brutal. Matthew, who had been a mediocre husband and an absent father, suddenly became man of the year. He fought for custody not because he wanted to be a father, but because Olivia had painted a fantasy of perfect family in his mind. I ended up with shared custody. But in practice, Emma spent more and more time at his house. The house that I had helped pay for during 15 years of marriage became his and Olivia's property. I moved to a rented apartment and watched my teenage daughter become dazzled by the glamorous life that Olivia offered. Spa days, shopping at expensive boutiques, vacations at resorts, all financed by the salary that Matthew earned as a sales manager, the same job he had throughout our marriage, but which now mysteriously seemed to yield much more. What Emma didn't know, and what I never had the courage to tell, was that I paid much more than just her education. The divorce agreement stipulated that I pay child support until she turned 21, as well as cover all medical, educational, and transportation expenses. Matthew contributed $300 a month, a ridiculous amount that barely covered a week of expenses with Emma. While Olivia flaunted her 1,000 dresses and took Emma to 5-star restaurant lunches, I was working overtime to keep my daughter's health insurance active. While they took pictures at luxurious spas to post on Instagram, I was saving every penny to ensure that Emma had everything she needed at university. But in my daughter's mind, I was the failure. I was the mother who gave boring gifts like books and practical clothes. I was the one who worried about budgets and bank accounts. I was the one who said no when she wanted something extravagant. Olivia was the one who said yes to everything because she didn't have to pay the real bills. That night, after the humiliating lunch, I did something I had never done before. I called my sister Megan, who lived in Portland, and unburdened myself. For 2 hours, I told her everything. Years of unrecognized sacrifices of being treated like an emotional ATM, of watching my daughter despise me while idolizing a woman who had never sacrificed anything for her. Rachel, Megan said, her voice firm through the phone. You realize you're being used, don't you? You realize they've created a system where you pay for everything? And Olivia takes all the credit. I knew. I always knew. But admitting it meant admitting that I had failed as a mother, that I had raised a daughter who didn't respect me. It meant admitting that 20 years of sacrifices had been in vain. What do I do, Megan? She's my daughter. I can't just stop. Of course you can, she interrupted me. Emma is 20. Rachel, she's an adult. And adults need to understand that actions have consequences. I hung up the phone at 2 o'clock in the morning but couldn't sleep. I stayed in the kitchen drinking tea and looking at the laptop open on the table. On the screen were all the bills I paid monthly. University tuition, car insurance, health insurance, credit cards she used for emergencies. Emergencies that included expensive clothes and dinners at restaurants that I could never afford for myself. At 4 in the morning, I made a decision that would change our lives forever. I opened each of the online accounts and started making changes. I canceled the additional credit card. I called the university and froze future payments. I canceled the car insurance. And lastly, I used the tracking app to locate the Toyota that was parked at Emma's dorm. At 6 o'clock in the morning, I drove to Northwestern with a tow truck I had rented. I found the car exactly where the GPS indicated. Using my spare key, I started the engine and put it on the tow truck. Some students looked on curiously, but nobody questioned a middle-aged woman recovering her own vehicle. When I got home, it was dawning. I put the Toyota keys in the kitchen drawer and went to take a shower. For the first time in 4 years, I felt something I had completely forgotten. Control. I was in control of my own life. The first call came at 9 o'clock in the morning. Emma was hysterical. Mom, my card isn't working. I tried to buy coffee and it was declined. And where's my car? It's not in the parking lot. I was at the office reviewing tax spreadsheets when I answered. My voice came out calmer than I expected. I canceled the card. Emma and I recovered the car. What? You can't do that. I need those things. You need or you want, I asked, continuing to type. Because until yesterday, from what I understood, I was just a failure who didn't understand anything about success in life. So I thought maybe Olivia, who is so successful and inspiring, can help with these responsibilities. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then the crying began. Not the crying of a hurt child, but the manipulative crying that Emma had perfected since adolescence. Mom, you can't do this to me. I have exams next week. I need to concentrate on my studies. Great, I answered. Studying is exactly what you should be doing at university, not spending money on expensive restaurants and designer clothes. But how am I going to get places? How am I going to eat? I sighed. Emma, you're at a university with a cafeteria, public transportation, and thousands of other students who survive without an unlimited credit card. You'll figure out a way. She hung up on me. 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time it was Matthew. Rachel, what the hell do you think you're doing? His voice was loud, authoritative, the same tone he used when he wanted to make me feel small during our marriage. I'm stopping paying for a daughter who disrespects me, I answered, surprising myself with my own firmness. You can't just cancel everything. We have an agreement. I do. And if you read the clauses, you'll discover that I have the right to suspend financial support if Emma demonstrates extreme ingratitude or disrespectful behavior. My lawyer explained this to me yesterday. This was a lie. I hadn't spoken to any lawyer. But Matthew didn't know that, and his hesitation confirmed to me that he also didn't know the details of the agreement he had signed 4 years ago. Look, Rachel, I know Emma sometimes speaks without thinking, but she's young, she's 20. Matthew, when I was 20, I was already working 2 jobs to pay for my own college. Maybe it's time for her to learn some responsibility. You're being ridiculous. Olivia is very upset about this whole situation. The mention of Olivia made me laugh. A short, bitter laugh. Oh, Olivia is upset? Too bad. Maybe she can use some of her inspiration in class to help our daughter. You know, our financial situation doesn't allow what financial situation? Matthew, you just bought a Mercedes for Olivia. You went to Cancun last month, so don't come to me with stories of financial difficulties. There was another silence. Then his tone changed. It became softer, more manipulative. Honey, I know you're hurt about what happened yesterday, but you can't punish our daughter because of it. Don't call me honey, I replied, feeling a cold anger rise up my spine. And I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just stopping facilitating unacceptable behavior. But she needs things. How is she going to get around? How is she going to eat? The same way millions of other college students do with responsibility and creativity. Or maybe you and Olivia can take on some of these parental responsibilities. He hung up without answering. 2 minutes later, my phone rang again. Olivia. Rachel, we need to talk. Her voice had that artificially sweet tone she used when she wanted something. About what, Olivia? About this whole situation with Emma. I know you're upset, but you need to think about her well-being. I've thought about her well-being for 20 years, I replied. Time for you to think about it too. You know our situation is complicated. Complicated how you have money for spas, expensive clothes, luxury cars, but not to help with the expenses of your husband's daughter. There was a pause. It's not that simple, Rachel. I have my own expenses, my own responsibilities. Oh, of course. And what are your responsibilities, Olivia? Because from what I see, you have time to take Emma for expensive lunches and shopping. But you don't have any financial responsibility. I contribute emotionally. Emma needs a strong female figure in her life. The irony was so absurd I almost laughed. A strong female figure. Olivia, you're a 32-year-old woman who has never had a real job, who lives off her husband's salary, and who convinced a 20-year-old girl that I'm a failure because I pay the bills instead of showing off. That's not fair. You know what's not fair, spending 4 years paying $28,000 a year for education, plus insurance, plus credit card, plus all the expenses, while you take the credit for being the fun mom. You know what's not fair. Being called a failure by a daughter who never had to work a day in her life. Rachel, you're being very dramatic. Dramatic, Olivia. You want to know what's dramatic? It's discovering that you spent $300 at a spa last week. Money that technically came from the salary that Matthew should be using to support his daughter, while I cut my own health insurance to continue paying for hers. Total silence on the other end of the line. So here's the deal, I continued. You want Emma to have all these nice things. Great, pay for them. You want her to have a car, buy one. You want her to have a credit card. Put it in your names. But I'm done being the silent ATM while you take all the credit. You can't do this to her, Olivia screamed, and for the first time, I heard real desperation in her voice. Of course I can. She's an adult, and adults need to learn that you can't bite the hand that feeds you. I hung up the phone and put it on silent. For the rest of the day, I received 14 missed calls. 8 from Emma, 4 from Matthew, and 2 from Olivia. I ignored them all. At 6 o'clock in the evening, when I got home, I found a text message from Emma. Mom, please, I need the car back. I promise I'll be more respectful. I typed the response. Respect isn't something you promise Emma. It's something you demonstrate with actions, not words. She replied immediately, but I need to go to work. What work? I replied. There was no response. That night, I prepared dinner just for myself. Grilled salmon with asparagus, something I never did because Emma didn't like fish. I opened a bottle of wine that had been saved for months and sat on the small balcony of my apartment watching the sunset. For the first time in 4 years, I didn't have to worry if Emma had arrived safely at the dorm. I didn't have to check if she had spent too much on the credit card. I didn't have to worry if she was safe driving at night because for the first time in 4 years, these responsibilities were no longer just mine. My phone rang at 10 at night. It was a number I didn't recognize. Hello, Rachel. This is Samantha, Emma's roommate. My heart raced. What happened? Is she okay? She's physically fine, but she's having a crisis. She's been crying for hours saying you abandoned her. Some friends brought pizza to the room because she has no money to eat. I felt a pang of guilt, but took a deep breath. Samantha, Emma is an adult. She has resources. There's a cafeteria at the university. There are student assistance programs. There's the possibility of getting a part-time job. She just never needed to use any of these resources before, but she's really bad. Ms. Stone, I've never seen her like this. Thank you for calling Samantha. I know you're worried about your friend, but sometimes people need to go through difficulties to grow. Emma will be fine. When I hung up, my hands were trembling. Part of me wanted to run to the car, drive to the dorm, and fix everything. But another part, a part that had been silent for a long time, reminded me of the words Emma had said at the restaurant. Failure. No, I wasn't a failure. I was a woman who had raised a daughter, supported a family, maintained a stable job for 2 decades, and survived a devastating divorce. I was a woman who had been disrespected and humiliated, but who still had enough strength to defend her own dignity. Emma needed to learn that actions have consequences, and I needed to learn that it wasn't my responsibility to protect her from all the consequences of her own choices. I finished my wine and went to bed. For the first time in months, I slept through the night without interruptions. The weekend passed in relative silence. My phone kept ringing, but I had blocked the numbers of Matthew, Olivia, and Emma. I needed peace to think, to process what I had done, and more importantly, to decide how to move forward. On Saturday, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to the mall alone, not to buy anything necessary, but simply to look at the store windows and remember what it was like to have time for myself. I stopped in front of a women's clothing store and realized I hadn't bought anything for myself besides basic work clothes in more than 2 years. I entered the store and tried on a navy blue dress. It cost $150, exactly what I spent on Emma in a typical week. I bought it without hesitation. On Sunday, I called Megan. She answered on the second ring. "How are you feeling?" she asked immediately. Scared, I admitted, but also free. "It's strange. Has Emma called you?" She tried. I blocked her number. "Good. Megan, do you think I did the right thing? I mean, she's my daughter." Rachel, stop. "She's your adult daughter. There's a difference. You raised a capable, intelligent, and healthy person. Now it's time for her to prove it. But what if she really can't make it on her own? What if? What if she can? What if she discovers she's stronger than she thought? What if she learns to value what you did for her all these years?" I spent Sunday cleaning the apartment, something I always did, hurriedly between calls from Emma or worries about her needs. This time, I cleaned every corner, calmly putting on loud music and even dancing a little. When I finished, I looked around and realized that my apartment was small but cozy. It was mine. On Monday, I was returning from work when I found Matthew waiting in the parking lot of my building. He looked tired, older than I remembered. "We need to talk," he said, getting out of the car. "No, we don't," I replied, walking past him towards the entrance. "Rachel, please, 5 minutes." I stopped but didn't turn around. 5 minutes. Emma is desperate. She can't go anywhere. She has no money for anything beyond the cafeteria, which is exactly what millions of students do. I interrupted. She called Olivia crying, asking for financial help. That caught my attention. I turned to face him, and Matthew ran his hand through his hair. "And Olivia, well, she said, our financial situation doesn't allow us to take on all these responsibilities at once." Interesting. So the woman who is so successful and inspiring can't help the stepdaughter she so adores. It's not like that, Rachel. It's that it's a lot of expenses. $28,000 a year plus insurance plus credit card plus car. Exactly. I said, feeling a cold satisfaction. It's a lot of expenses. Expenses that I assumed alone while you enjoyed the benefits. But you always handled it. You have a stable job. I have a stable job because I worked for it. I pay these bills because I made that choice. But now I'm making a different choice. Rachel, be reasonable. You can't just abandon our daughter. I didn't abandon anyone. I stopped facilitating her disrespectful behavior and your dependence. There's a difference. Matthew was silent for a moment. Then he tried a different approach. "Look, I know Emma said things that hurt you. She was wrong, but she's young. She didn't mean, of course she meant it." I interrupted. "She meant every word. And you know why? Because you and Olivia spent 4 years brainwashing her, making her believe that I am inferior to you because I pay the bills instead of showing off. That's not..." "It's true, Matthew. You created a system where I'm the boring mom who says no and worries about money, while Olivia is the fun mom who says yes to everything. But you forgot one detail. I'm the one who makes it possible for Olivia to say yes." He didn't answer. He knew I was right. "So here's what's going to happen," I continued. "You want Emma to have all these perks? Great, pay for them. You want her to respect me? She's going to have to earn that back. Because I'm done being treated like a failure by people who depend on me. And if we can't pay for everything, then you'll have to make choices, won't you? Just like me. Just like any responsible adult." Matthew stood there for a moment, clearly frustrated. "Rachel, you're being cruel. Cruel. Matthew, cruel is spending 4 years letting our daughter disrespect me. Cruel is allowing your wife to humiliate me indirectly through our daughter. Cruel is treating me like an ATM while taking all the credit for being the cool parents. We never..." "Of course you did. When was the last time Emma thanked me for paying for her education? When was the last time she acknowledged that I sacrificed my own quality of life to give her opportunities that I never had? When was the last time you included me in any important decision about her life?" He couldn't answer because we knew the answer was never. So no, Matthew, I'm not going back. Emma is an intelligent and capable adult. Time for her to prove it. He left without saying anything else. I went up to my apartment and prepared dinner, feeling strangely at peace. I was watching a documentary when the phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello, Mom? Emma's voice was probably from crying so much. Emma, Mom, please. I need you to forgive me. I I didn't mean to say those things. I was angry. I don't know why. You know why, Emma. You said those things because it's what you really think. That's not true. I love you, Mom. You know I love you. Loving and respecting are different things, I replied. You can love me and still consider me a failure. You can love me and still disrespect me. I don't disrespect you, Emma. You called me a failure in public. You spent 4 years comparing me unfavorably with Olivia, a woman who never contributed a penny to your upbringing. You always accepted my sacrifices as if they were obligations, but never acknowledged what they meant. I heard her sob on the other end of the line. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Please forgive me. I forgive you, Emma. But forgiveness doesn't mean things will go back to how they were. What do you mean? I mean you're an adult now, and adults need to take responsibility for their choices and their words, but I need the car. I need the credit card. How am I going to? You'll figure it out, just like millions of other college students figure it out. Mom, please don't do this to me. I promise I'll be different. I don't want promises, Emma. I want real change. And those changes start with you taking responsibility for your own life. But I don't know how. Then it's time to learn. Mom, I love you. Please don't abandon me. I'm not abandoning you, Emma. I'm giving you the opportunity to grow to become the independent and strong person I always knew you could be. But what if I can't do it? Then you'll discover that you're stronger than you think, just like me. I hung up the phone and cried. I cried because it hurt. I cried because it was necessary. I cried because for the first time in 20 years, I had chosen my own dignity instead of making life easier for my daughter. At 10 at night, I received a text message from an unknown number. Miss Stone, this is Josh from Northwestern. I'm Emma's friend. She asked me to tell you that she got a part-time job at the university library. She wanted you to know. I smiled through the tears. Maybe it would work. Maybe she really was stronger than I thought. 3 weeks passed. Emma called regularly, but our conversations were different. She didn't ask for money directly, but always mentioned her difficulties. How hard it was to work in the library for just $12 an hour. How humiliating it was to use public transportation. How her friends were beginning to notice that she could no longer participate in expensive social activities. On a Thursday night, she called crying again. This time it seemed different, more desperate. Mom, I can't take it anymore. I'm exhausted from working and studying. I barely have time to sleep. My classmates are getting better grades because they can dedicate themselves just to studies. I'm harming my future because of your hurt pride. My hurt pride, I repeated, feeling the familiar anger rise. Yes, you're punishing me because I hurt your feelings, but that's not fair, Mom. I'm your daughter. You should support me unconditionally. Unconditional support, I muttered. Emma, do you know how many times I worked late to pay your bills? How many times I canceled personal plans to meet your needs? How many times I sacrificed things I wanted to ensure you had everything? I know, Mom, and I'm grateful. No, you're not. You never were. You always accepted my sacrifices as if they were natural obligations, as if I owed this to you. But you do. You're my mother. And there it was, the raw truth she had never admitted before. I owed her. I owed her everything, simply for existing. Emma. I said, my voice becoming firmer. I raised you for 20 years. I supported you, educated you, protected you, and loved you. I fulfilled all my obligations as a mother. You are an adult now. My obligations have ended. You can't do this. Other mothers don't do this. Other daughters don't call their mothers failures in public, I replied. I've apologized for that 1,000 times. Apologizing doesn't undo what was said, Emma. It doesn't undo years of disrespect and ingratitude. So that's it. You're going to punish me forever. I'm not punishing you. I'm giving you the chance to grow, to become independent, to value the things you have. But I don't want to be independent yet. I want to finish my education in peace. And you can. There are student loans, scholarships, assistance programs. There are many ways to pay for an education that don't involve depending on the failure mother. Mom, please. No, Emma. My decision is final. You are an intelligent and capable adult. Prove it. I hung up the phone and realized I no longer felt guilt. I felt something different. I felt relief. The next morning, I was having coffee when I received a call from Olivia. This time, she wasn't trying to be sweet. Rachel, this needs to stop. You're being ridiculous. Good morning to you too, Olivia. Emma is suffering. She's working until she's exhausted. Her grades are falling. Her grades are falling. Interesting. She told me she was working 12 hours a week at the library. That barely counts as part-time. Well, she's under a lot of emotional stress. Emotional stress from having to take on responsibilities like an adult. You're being cruel, Rachel. A real mother wouldn't do this. A real mother, I repeated. Olivia, do you want to know what a real mother does? A real mother wakes up at 5 in the morning to work overtime to pay for her daughter's education. A real mother gives up vacations, new clothes dinners at restaurants to ensure her daughter has everything she needs. I know you sacrificed. You don't know anything. You spent 4 years playing fun mom with the money I earned. You took my daughter to spas that cost more than I spend on myself in 6 months. You bought clothes for her that cost more than my rent. I was being generous. You were being generous with my money because every dollar Matthew spent on you was a dollar he wasn't contributing to Emma's expenses. Olivia was silent for a moment. Look, Rachel, I understand that you're upset, but you need to think about what's best for Emma. I am thinking about what's best for her. For the first time in 20 years, I'm thinking about what's really best for her in the long run. And what's best for her is to suffer. What's best for her is to learn that her actions have consequences, that she can't disrespect the people who love her and expect them to continue doing everything for her. But you're her mother. Exactly. I'm her mother, not you. So stop pretending that you care about her well-being when you only care about your own convenience. That's not true. Of course it is. Of course you like being seen as the cool mom, but you don't want to take on any of the real responsibilities. You want me to keep paying the bills so you can continue being the favorite. Our financial situation is complicated. Your financial situation is complicated because you spend money you don't have on things you don't need. Just like Emma. Just like anyone who never had to work for what they have. Matthew works hard. Matthew earns the same salary he earned when we were married. The difference is that now he has a wife who spends everything on frivolities instead of a wife who saved and invested. Olivia hung up on me. 15 minutes later, Matthew called. Rachel, Olivia is crying. You were very harsh with her. I was honest with her. There's a difference. Look, I know our situation isn't ideal, but you can't just abandon Emma. How many times do I need to say this? I didn't abandon anyone. I stopped facilitating toxic behaviors. Toxic Rachel, she's our daughter. Exactly. Our daughter, not just mine. So where is your part in all this? I contribute what I can. You contribute $300 a month. Matthew, $300. You spent more than that on Olivia's last birthday party. That's not fair. You earn more than me. I earn more than you. Matthew, you've been a sales manager for 15 years. I've been an accountant for 15 years. Our salaries are similar. The difference is that you spend everything on luxuries and I save for responsibilities. But Olivia has needs. What needs? She's 28 years old and doesn't work. What are her needs that are more important than your daughter's education? Silence. Here's the truth, Matthew. You want Emma to have everything, but you don't want to pay for anything. You want her to respect me, but you do nothing to earn respect. You want me to continue being the responsible mother while you are the fun parents. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. And I'm done. You want Emma to have a car, buy one. You want her to have a credit card, put it in your names. You want her to have all the perks, pay for them. But we can't pay for everything at once. Then make choices. Just like me, just like any responsible adult, Rachel, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. For the first time in 4 years, I'm being completely reasonable. I hung up the phone and sat in silence for a few minutes. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I called the beauty salon and scheduled a haircut and color. Then I called the gym near my apartment and signed up for yoga classes. In the afternoon, I went to the mall and bought 3 new dresses, 2 pairs of shoes, and a makeup set. I spent $800, exactly what I used to spend on Emma in 2 weeks. For the first time in 20 years, I spent money on myself without feeling guilty. That night, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. There was a woman there that I hadn't seen in decades. A woman who wasn't exhausted, who wasn't worried, who wasn't sacrificing everything for someone else. There was a woman who was finally living her own life. My phone rang. It was Emma again. This time I didn't answer. She left a voice message. Mom, please call me back. I need to talk to you. Something happened. I deleted the message without listening to the end. Whatever the emergency was this time, she could solve it herself or call Matthew and Olivia or find an adult solution. For the first time in 20 years, Emma's problems weren't automatically my problems. And that feeling was liberating in a way I had never imagined possible. 2 months passed. My life had changed in ways I never imagined possible. I was attending yoga classes 3 times a week, had enrolled in a ballroom dancing course on Saturdays, and for the first time in years, I was going out with friends. Melissa, my coworker, invited me for happy hour on a Friday. I always declined these invitations because I needed to be available for Emma's calls. This time I said yes. Rachel, you're different, Melissa commented as we drank martinis in a sophisticated downtown bar. More present, more you, more me, I repeated, smiling. Funny, I had forgotten who me was without just being Emma's mom. And how does it feel? Scary, I admitted, but also free. It was that night that I met Steve. He was at the bar with coworkers, was an architect 45 years old, and had a smile that made me feel butterflies in my stomach for the first time in a decade. Can I offer you a drink? He asked when Melissa went to the bathroom. I already have one, I replied, raising my martini. Then can I keep you company while you finish it? We talked for 2 hours. He was intelligent, funny, and treated me as if my opinions were important. When he asked for my number, I hesitated for only a second before saying yes. Do you have children? I asked when he called me the following Sunday. I have a 16-year-old son. He lives with his mother, but I spend weekends with him. And you? I have a 20-year-old daughter. She's in college. Ah, so you're in the empty nest phase. How are you handling it? Better than I expected. I answered and realized it was true. Our first date was dinner at an Italian restaurant. Steve was a gentleman, opened the car door for me, pulled out my chair, and asked about my work, my hobbies, my dreams. How long had it been since someone asked about my dreams? You seem surprised, he commented when I told him about my recent promotion at work. Surprised about what? About the fact that someone is interested in you as a person, not just as a mother. He had hit the nail on the head. During our marriage, Matthew never showed real interest in me as an individual. I was the wife, the mother, the person who organized his life. My identity had become totally defined by what I did for others. You're right, I admitted. It's been a long time since someone has seen me as Rachel. Just Rachel. Well, I'd like to get to know this Rachel better, he said, taking my hand. Meanwhile, Emma's calls continued, but were less frequent. She had stopped crying and begging, replacing this with a more resentful tone. Mom, I hope you're happy, she said on a Tuesday night. I got a student loan to cover the expenses you refused to pay. Great, I replied. That's exactly what you should have done from the beginning. You don't understand. I'll leave college owing $50,000. This will affect my entire life, Emma. Most college students leave owing money. It's normal. But it didn't have to be this way. You could have continued helping. I could have, but I chose not to. Why? Just to punish me. To teach you independence. To teach you responsibility. To teach you that you can't treat people badly and expect them to continue making your life easier. But $50,000. Mom, it's less than I've already spent on you in the last 2 years, I replied calmly. And at least now you'll value your education because you're paying for it. You've changed, she said, and there was something different in her voice. It was no longer desperation or anger. It was recognition. Yes, I changed, and that change is permanent. I'm going to have to work for years to pay this off. Welcome to adult life, Emma. She hung up without saying goodbye. I wasn't bothered by it. She was beginning to understand that her situation wasn't temporary, that I wouldn't go back on my decision, that she really would have to take responsibility for her own life. 3 weeks later, I was leaving the cinema with Steve when my phone rang. It was Matthew. Rachel, we need to talk urgently. No, we don't, I replied, but there was something in his voice that made me hesitate. What happened? Olivia is pregnant again. I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, and our financial situation is going to get even more complicated. We won't be able to help Emma with anything in the coming years. Matthew, that's not my problem, but it's Emma's problem. She's counting on our help. Then maybe you should have thought about that before deciding to have another child. Rachel, be understanding. You know how expensive it is to have a baby. I know. I had a daughter and raised her alone for 20 years. You didn't raise her alone. Of course I did. Financially, emotionally, practically. You were physically present, but I did all the heavy lifting. That's not true. It is true, Matthew. And you know it is. So don't call me asking for understanding for a situation that you created. But Emma is an adult. She'll have to figure out how to deal with this just like any other adult. Rachel, please. No. You made adult decisions. Now deal with the adult consequences. I hung up the phone. Steve was watching me curiously. Family problem, he asked. XF family problem, I replied. They're discovering that being an adult is difficult. And how do you feel about that? I thought for a moment, relieved. For the first time in 20 years, their problems aren't automatically my problems. Steve smiled. You're a very strong woman, Rachel. I'm learning to be, I replied. A week later, I was at work when my boss, Diane, called me into her office. Rachel, I want to offer you a promotion. Senior accounting manager. It comes with a 20% salary increase, but also with more responsibilities and some travel. A year ago, I would have immediately declined. More responsibilities and travel meant less availability for Emma. But now I accept, I said without hesitation. Are you sure? I know you always prioritize flexibility because of your daughter. My daughter is an adult now. It's time for me to prioritize my career. Diane smiled. Good. You deserve this, Rachel. You've always been our most dedicated employee. When I left her office, I felt a euphoria that I hadn't experienced in decades, not just for the money, but for the recognition. Someone had noticed my work. Someone had valued my dedication. That night, I called Steve to share the news. Let's celebrate, he said. Dinner somewhere special. I'd love that, Rachel. Yes, I'm proud of you. I know this transition hasn't been easy. It hasn't, I admitted, but it's been necessary, and you're doing incredibly well. For the first time in 20 years, someone was proud of me. Not for being a good mother, not for sacrificing for others, but for taking care of myself, for making difficult but necessary choices. That night, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized the woman I saw there. I was thinner, better dressed, more confident. There was a light in my eyes that I hadn't seen in years. I was finally living my own life, and it was a good life. My phone rang. It was Emma. This time I answered, Mom, I heard you were promoted. Congratulations. Thank you, I replied, surprised by the genuineness in her voice. I wanted to talk to you about some things. Can I visit you this weekend? Sure, but it will have to be Saturday afternoon. I have plans on Friday and Sunday, plans I'm dating someone, and I have dance class on Sundays. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Mom, yes, you really have changed, haven't you? Completely. Forever. Forever. Another silence. Okay, I'll come on Saturday afternoon. When I hung up, I realized I didn't feel anxiety about the visit. I didn't feel guilt or expectation. I just felt curiosity about what Emma had to say. For the first time in our relationship, I was in control. Emma arrived at my apartment on Saturday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. When I opened the door, I almost didn't recognize her. She was thinner, her hair simpler, wearing jeans and a basic t-shirt instead of the designer clothes she used to wear. Hi, Mom, she said hesitantly. Hi, sweetie, come in. She looked around the apartment and stopped. Wow, you redecorated. I renovated some things, I replied casually. I had bought new furniture, painted the walls, bought artwork. The apartment was unrecognizable, more adult, more elegant, more mine. It's beautiful, she said. And for the first time in years, I heard genuine admiration in her voice. Very sophisticated. Thank you. Would you like coffee or water? Coffee is good. I prepared coffee in my new machine, a gift I had bought for myself, and we sat in the living room. Mom, I wanted to apologize to you. Emma began, her hands shaking slightly. Not just for what I said at the restaurant, but for everything, for how I treated you all these years. It's okay, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. No, it's not okay. I was horrible to you. I said terrible things. I disrespected you. I treated you as if you were an employee, not my mother. You're right, I agreed. You treated me badly. She seemed surprised by my direct honesty. I think I didn't realize how much you did for me, how much you sacrificed. Didn't realize or didn't want to realize. Probably didn't want to, she admitted. It was easier to see you as the boring mom who worried about money than to acknowledge that you were holding my entire life in your hands. And now I'm living on my own for the first time. I'm working 20 hours a week studying, paying my own bills, and it's much harder than I imagined. Welcome to adult life. Mom, I understand why you did what you did. You were trying to teach me responsibility. I was trying to teach myself self-respect. I corrected. Responsibility is a bonus. Emma was silent for a moment. You're really not going to go back on this, are you? No. Even if I beg, even if I promise I'll be different even then. Why? I sighed. Emma, you're 20 years old. In the next few years, you'll graduate, get a job, maybe get married, have children. You'll build an adult life. I also deserve to build an adult life. But you've always been an adult. No, I've always been a mother. There's a difference. In the last 6 months, for the first time since you were born, I'm being Rachel. Not Emma's mom, just Rachel. And I like who Rachel is. And who is Rachel? I smiled. Rachel is a woman who works hard, who has professional ambitions, who likes to dance, who is in a healthy relationship, who has friends, who spends money on herself without feeling guilty. Are you dating seriously? Yes. Steve is an architect. He's kind, intelligent, and treats me as if I were important. I always treated you as if you were important, she protested. You treated me as if I were useful. There's a difference. Emma started crying. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Can you forgive me? I already forgave you, Emma. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean things will go back to how they were. Then how will they be? We'll have to figure it out. You're an adult. I'm an adult. We can have an adult relationship based on mutual respect. But I'm still your daughter. Yes, you are. And I still love you, but you're no longer my responsibility. You're your own responsibility. Emma wiped her eyes. I got a loan to cover the rest of college. I'll graduate owing $50,000. How much do most of your classmates owe about that? She admitted. Then you're average. It's not the end of the world. Dad said he can't help because Olivia is pregnant again. I heard. And how do you feel about that, betrayed? She said honestly. I always thought they would help me if you didn't help. But when it came time to really pay the bills, they found excuses. And has that taught you anything? It taught me that Olivia isn't as perfect as I thought. It taught me that it's easy to be generous with other people's money. And about me? Emma hesitated. It taught me that you weren't the failure in this story. It taught me that you held everything in your hands and I didn't even realize it. And now I realize it, and I'm sorry it took me so long to realize it. We spent the rest of the afternoon talking. Emma told me about her job, her studies, how she was learning to manage money. I told her about my promotion, about Steve, about my dance classes. You seem happy, she observed when she was getting ready to leave. I am happy, I replied. For the first time in a long time, do you think we can try to have a normal relationship as adults? We can try, I agreed. But it will be different, Emma. I won't be your financial safety net anymore. I won't put my life aside for your needs anymore. I won't accept disrespect anymore. I understand, she said, and I accept. We'll see, I replied. A year has passed since that day at the Mexican restaurant. I'm sitting on the balcony of my new apartment. Yes, I moved to a bigger and nicer place, drinking my morning coffee while I write this story. Emma graduated last month. She got a job at a marketing company in Chicago, earning a decent salary for a recent graduate. She still owes the $50,000 in student loans, but she has a plan to pay them off in 10 years. She's living with 2 coworkers in a small but tidy apartment. Our relationship has completely changed. We talk once a week, always on Sunday afternoon. She tells me about work. I tell her about my life. There's no more drama, no more requests for money, no more comparisons with Olivia. There's mutual respect. Last month, she sent me a Mother's Day card. Inside, there was a 3-page letter thanking me for everything I did for her over the years. She wrote, Mom, I know I was terrible to you for a long time. I know I didn't value your sacrifices. I know I hurt you deeply. But I want you to know that today at 21, I finally understand what you did for me. You gave me everything. Education opportunities, unconditional love. And when I disrespected you, you still gave me the most important lesson of my life, that I am strong enough to take care of myself. Thank you for not giving up on me. Even when I gave up on you, I cried when I read it. Not from sadness, but from relief. My daughter had finally grown up. Steve and I are engaged. He proposed last month during a trip to Napa Valley, a trip I would never have taken when all my energy and money were dedicated to Emma. We're getting married in the fall in a small and elegant ceremony. Emma was genuinely happy when I told her about the engagement. Mom, you deserve to be happy. She said, you deserve someone who values you. There was no jealousy, no drama, just adult support. Matthew and Olivia had their second child, a boy they named Ryan. I heard they're having financial difficulties. Olivia had to go back to work part-time at a department store. The reality of life with 2 children, a high mortgage, and excessive spending finally caught up with them. Emma told me that Matthew called her a few weeks ago, asking if she could lend money to help with the baby's expenses. She said, no. Dad, I earn an entry-level salary and have student loans to pay, she explained. I can't help financially. He was upset, but she maintained her position. My daughter had finally learned to set boundaries. As for me, I'm a completely different person. I was promoted again at work. Now I'm the accounting director. I earn more money than I ever imagined possible. I travel for work regularly, something I always wanted to do but never could because I needed to be available for Emma. I have an active social circle. I go out with friends regularly, participate in a book club, still take dance classes. Steve and I travel together, go to concerts, dine at sophisticated restaurants. I have a full and rich life. I bought a new car, a hybrid SUV that I always wanted but could never justify the expense. I completely renovated my wardrobe. I do spa treatments occasionally. I spend money on myself without guilt because I learned that taking care of myself isn't selfishness, it's necessity. Sometimes people ask me if I regret the drastic decision I made. The answer is no, not for a second. That decision saved my life and ironically saved my relationship with my daughter. If I had continued facilitating Emma's behavior, she would never have learned independence. She would never have developed self-respect or respect for me. She would never have become the strong and capable woman she is today. And I would never have discovered who Rachel really is when not entirely defined by the role of mother. Today, as I write these words, I can say with certainty, I wasn't the failure in this story. I was the woman who made impossible sacrifices for 20 years, and when disrespected had enough courage to say no more. I was the woman who chose her own dignity above others' convenience. I was the woman who realized that loving someone means letting them face the consequences of their own actions. I was the woman who decided that she deserved to be treated with respect. And today, at 43, I am the woman who is finally living the life she deserves. My name is Rachel. I am an accountant, fiancé, friend, dancer, traveler, and yes, mother. But today, being a mother is just a part of who I am, not the entirety of my identity. And that I discovered makes me not just a happier woman, but a better mother. Sometimes the greatest lesson you can teach someone is that you won't always be there to solve their problems. Sometimes the greatest love you can show is refusing to facilitate someone's weakness. I'm not a failure. I never was. I just took 42 years to realize it. And now that I realize it, no one will ever make me forget.